I watched my wife declares she didn't need me after her promotion, so I planned my exit, divided our life, walked away and finally claimed my freedom. It was during our anniversary dinner when I first noticed the change. What should have been a celebration of our journey together instead became the moment I realized our paths were diverging. "I don't need you to order for me," she snapped when I suggested her favorite wine. "I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions." The friends at our table shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between us as an awkward silence fell. That night was just the beginning. Over the following months, these declarations of independence became more frequent and increasingly public. She'd interrupt me during conversations, correct my statements, and make it clear that my input was neither required nor welcome. But nothing compared to that fateful dinner party last month that pushed me over the edge. We were hosting 4 couples, colleagues from her new job at the marketing firm where she'd recently been promoted. She'd been excited about impressing them, and I had spent hours helping prepare an elaborate meal. As I served the main course, I overheard her in the living room, wineglass in hand. "My husband? Oh, he's just in the kitchen. I let him handle the cooking since he has more time these days." She laughed, though I was working 60-hour weeks while she maintained a standard 9 to 5. "Between us, marriage is just a piece of paper. I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't actually need him for anything." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the kitchen, serving spoon in hand as the group laughed along with her. In that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't a fleeting comment. It was the culmination of a new pattern. The respect that had been the foundation of our relationship had eroded into something unrecognizable. Later that night, after everyone had gone and she had fallen asleep without so much as a thank you for the meal, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I reflected on how things had changed since her promotion 6 months ago. The gratitude and partnership that had characterized our early years together had been replaced by a strange competitive edge. It wasn't just that she felt empowered. I had always supported her career and ambitions. This was different. She seemed to believe that her success required diminishing me. I thought about our shared finances, how my name was on most of the mortgage and car payments, how I covered our health insurance through my job, how I had supported her through graduate school just 3 years earlier. Despite her proclamations of independence, the reality was far more interconnected. The next morning over coffee, I attempted to discuss how her comments had made me feel. "You're being too sensitive," she dismissed, barely looking up from her phone. "It was just party talk. Besides, aren't you secure enough to handle a strong woman?" Before I could respond, she was already heading out the door, reminding me we needed groceries and that the credit card bill was due. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a rough patch or a phase that would pass. The woman I had married, the partner who had once valued and respected our union, was gone. In her place stood someone who wanted all the benefits of our partnership while publicly disavowing its importance. I didn't make any dramatic announcements. I didn't slam doors or issue ultimatums. Instead, I slowly began to formulate a plan. If she truly believed herself completely independent from me, perhaps it was time she experienced what that actually meant. Not out of spite, but as a reality check we both seemed to need. The transformation had been gradual, almost imperceptible at first. 3 years ago, she would call me during lunch breaks just to hear my voice. We would spend evenings cooking together, planning our future, discussing our dreams. Back then, we were truly partners. Her victories were mine and mine were hers. I remember clearly the night of her promotion. We celebrated with champagne on our rooftop balcony. She had tears in her eyes as she thanked me for supporting her through the long hours and stressful projects. "I couldn't have done this without you," she had said, her hands wrapped around mine. That was the last time I heard those words. Within weeks, our dynamic shifted. The first changes were subtle. She began declining my calls during the day, explaining she was too busy for chit-chat. Our evening conversations about her workday transformed from excited sharing to irritated sighs when I asked questions. "You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under," became her standard response, despite my own executive position. Then came the financial indications. Despite her substantial raise, her contributions to our joint account remained unchanged, while expensive packages arrived daily: designer clothes, premium cosmetics, status symbols for her new office. When I gently mentioned the surge in spending, she bristled. "I earn this money. I deserve to enjoy it." Our social life underwent the most dramatic alteration. Friends we had known for years were gradually replaced by her new colleagues. people who knew nothing about me except what she chose to share. And what she shared, I discovered, was a carefully curated fiction. I was portrayed alternately as needy, professionally stagnant, or simply irrelevant. 6 weeks after the dinner party incident, I found myself sitting in our home office reviewing our accounts. The mortgage payment had just processed, completely from my personal funds, as had been the case for the past 3 months since she had forgotten to transfer her portion. Our joint credit card showed restaurant charges for lunches I hadn't attended, with tips that suggested she wasn't dining alone. That evening, she returned home late, bringing the distinct scent of unfamiliar cologne. Working dinner, she explained without my asking, kicking off her heels and heading straight for the shower. I said nothing, but made a mental note to check her calendar the next day. The following morning, after she left for work, I confirmed my suspicions. There had been no team dinner scheduled. This wasn't the first lie, but somehow it crystallized everything. This wasn't just about her newfound independence. It was about a fundamental breach of trust. I spent that afternoon making calls, first to a lawyer, then to a real estate agent, and finally to my bank. I wasn't acting out of impulse or emotion. This was the calculated response of someone who had spent months observing the deterioration of what had once been the most important relationship in his life. That weekend, while she was at a team-building retreat, though her location app showed her at a lakeside resort known for its romantic accommodations, I opened a new bank account. I calculated exactly half of our joint assets and transferred that amount, not a penny more or less. I was fair, meticulously so. I wanted no one, including her, to claim I had acted dishonorably. Photographs of our life together stared down at me as I worked. Had she really changed so dramatically, or had she always been this person waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? I couldn't be sure. All I knew was that the woman who now wore my ring was unrecognizable from the one who had tearfully accepted it 5 years earlier. As I closed the spreadsheet detailing our separated finances, a text appeared on my phone. Don't wait up. Continuing discussions over drinks. No term of endearment, no estimated time of return. Just another casual dismissal from someone who had once treasured our every moment together. I won't wait up, I whispered to the empty house. In fact, I had no intention of waiting at all anymore. Planning my exit required precision and discretion. With each passing day, her indifference made my preparations easier. She rarely noticed my movements anymore, too absorbed in her phone or laptop to register my extended absences or late-night research sessions. I became a ghost in my own home, silently orchestrating my departure while she remained oblivious to the impending reality. My first step was securing a place to live. Through a colleague who owed me a favor, I found a furnished apartment across town, not luxurious but clean and available immediately, with no questions asked. I paid 3 months' rent up front in cash, ensuring no paper trail would alert her prematurely. The keys felt heavy in my pocket, a tangible reminder that I was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. Next came the legal consultation. The attorney listened patiently as I outlined our situation, nodding occasionally as I detailed the gradual dissolution of our partnership. This isn't uncommon, she said, arranging documents across her desk, but most people wait until the relationship becomes unbearable. I explained that I wasn't interested in drama or retribution, just a clean break that honored what our marriage had once been, not what it had become. The paperwork was straightforward. We had no children, thankfully, which simplified matters considerably. Our property division would be relatively uncomplicated. I wanted only what was indisputably mine. The retirement accounts and investments required more attention, but even those could be allocated according to contribution. I signed preliminary documents that would be finalized later, tucking copies into a secure cloud account she couldn't access. Financial separation proved the most intricate aspect. Over 3 weeks, I methodically transferred my direct deposits to a new account at a different bank. I maintained just enough in our joint accounts to avoid suspicion while ensuring I wouldn't leave myself vulnerable when I finally left. Credit cards were canceled and replaced, automatic payments for my personal expenses were rerouted, and I even set up a separate cell phone plan that would activate on my departure date. Throughout this process, her declarations of independence continued, each one reinforcing my resolve. During a weekend brunch with her new friends, she loudly proclaimed how she carried the relationship while I just coasted. When I received a significant project bonus the following week, she suggested I use it for finally contributing something meaningful to our savings, the same savings I had been solely maintaining for the past 6 months. The night before her planned weekend trip with her colleagues, I witnessed the culmination of her transformation. She packed expensive new luggage with tags still attached, carelessly dropping receipts that revealed purchases far exceeding her claimed shopping budget. When I picked one up, the amount made me wince. "Do we need to talk about spending?" I asked quietly. She snatched the receipt from my hand. "Don't monitor me like I'm a child. I've earned this trip. Besides, the monthly bills are covered, aren't they?" "They are," I confirmed, not mentioning that I had paid them entirely from my account for 3 consecutive months. "Then there's no problem," she concluded, returning to her packing. "While I'm gone, could you finally fix that leaking faucet? I've been asking for weeks." I agreed, though we both knew she had never mentioned it before. As she continued organizing her designer outfits, I noticed how she avoided my gaze in the mirror. Was there a flicker of guilt there, or just impatience to be away from me? That night she slept soundly while I lay awake, mentally reviewing my checklist. My essential belongings were already at the new apartment. Important documents were secured. Financial transitions were complete. All that remained was the actual departure and the letter I had drafted and redrafted a dozen times. In the morning, I prepared her favorite breakfast, a final gesture of what had once been genuine affection. She ate hurriedly, checking her phone between bites. "I'll be back Sunday night," she said, gathering her things. "Don't wait up." I nodded, watching her rush out without a backward glance or goodbye kiss. Another small death of what we had once shared. The sound of her car engine fading down the street felt like a curtain falling on the final act of a long-running play. Now alone, I took one last walk through the house that had been our home. Each room held memories of better days, promises made and kept before everything changed. I allowed myself exactly 30 minutes for nostalgia before beginning the final stage of my plan. The time for preparation was over. The moment for action had arrived. The house felt different once I committed to leaving it behind. Objects that had seemed permanent fixtures in my life suddenly appeared temporary, like props on a stage. I moved through each room with methodical precision, collecting the last of my personal belongings. Items she wouldn't immediately notice were missing, but that carried significance for me. My grandfather's watch, the leather-bound journal from my father, photos from before I met her. I worked efficiently, having rehearsed this process in my mind countless times. The few remaining clothes went into a single suitcase. Important documents were already secured in my briefcase. I left behind anything we had purchased together, including wedding gifts still in use. Those weren't just objects. They were symbols of a shared life I was now relinquishing. The morning light streamed through the kitchen windows as I sat at our dining table, pen in hand, staring at the blank page before me. How do you summarize the end of 8 years in a few paragraphs? I had drafted and discarded a dozen versions of this letter already. Too angry, too apologetic, too detailed, too vague. Finally, I wrote from a place of calm clarity. "I've respected your repeated declarations of independence, and I'm now honoring them completely. Our joint accounts have been divided equally. The mortgage and utilities are paid through the end of the month, giving you time to make arrangements. My personal belongings have been removed. I won't be returning. The woman I married valued partnership, mutual respect, and shared dreams. That woman seems gone now. I wish her well. You may contact me through my attorney if needed. Her information is attached." No accusations, no dramatic explanations. Just a simple acknowledgement of the reality she had been constructing. For months, a reality where I was unnecessary and unwanted. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter where she would see it immediately upon returning. My wedding ring sat deliberately beside it. The final task was the most difficult. I slowly walked through our home once more, this time saying goodbye. The living room where we had spent countless evenings planning our future, the kitchen where we had danced while cooking dinner, the bedroom where we had whispered dreams to each other in the darkness. Each space held echoes of the relationship we had built, and that she had systematically dismantled. At the front door, I paused to disarm the security system and remove my house key from my keychain. The small brass key felt impossibly heavy in my palm, a tiny object representing everything I was leaving behind. With deliberate care, I placed it on the entryway table, a final surrender of my place in this home. The click of the front door closing behind me was anticlimactic given the magnitude of the moment. No dramatic soundtrack accompanied my steps down the walkway. No sudden rainstorm marked the emotional weight of my departure. Just the ordinary sounds of a Saturday afternoon, children playing down the street, a neighbor mowing their lawn, birds calling from nearby trees. My car was parked 2 blocks away, loaded with the few boxes I'd been gradually moving over the past week. The engine started quietly, and I pulled away without looking back at the house. There was no need for a final glance. I had already memorized every detail of what I was leaving behind. As I drove across town to my new apartment, an unexpected lightness began to replace the heaviness in my chest. This wasn't the ending I had once envisioned for us, but it was an ending I had chosen rather than one that happened to me. There was power in that choice, a reclaiming of agency after months of being incrementally erased from my own marriage. I arrived at my new building just as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. The apartment was Spartan, basic furniture, white walls, none of the warmth or character of the home I had just left. But it was mine, a blank canvas, an opportunity to rebuild without the constant undermining of my worth. Setting my suitcase down in the bedroom, I checked my phone out of habit. No messages, no missed calls. She was undoubtedly still enjoying her weekend away, completely unaware that her life had just fundamentally changed. The disconnect between her current reality and what awaited her created a strange feeling in my stomach. Not satisfaction or vindication, but something more complex. A mixture of sadness for what had been lost and resolve about what needed to happen. I silenced my phone and placed it in a drawer. Whatever reaction came when she returned home tomorrow night, I wasn't going to witness it directly. The conversation we needed to have would happen eventually, but on different terms than before. No more dismissals, no more belittling, no more pretending we were still partners when we had clearly become strangers. As evening fell on my first night of this new chapter, I realized I had been holding my breath for months, waiting for something to change. Now I could finally exhale. The calls began Sunday evening at 6:42 p.m. I watched my phone light up repeatedly as her name flashed across the screen, 12 missed calls in the first hour alone. I had anticipated anger, confusion, perhaps even relief, but the frequency suggested panic. Between calls came text messages, their tone evolving rapidly. Is this some kind of joke? Where are you? Answer your phone. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk now. Please come home. We can work this out. I responded only once. A simple text. Please contact my attorney with any questions. Then I silenced notifications from her number. This wasn't callousness. It was self-preservation. Any direct communication would pull me back into the emotional vortex I had just escaped. Monday brought the financial reality. My attorney forwarded emails from her, first demanding access to our accounts, then expressing shock at discovering those accounts had been equitably divided. She had apparently gone to withdraw cash, only to find exactly half of what she expected, not cleaned out, not stolen, simply divided with mathematical precision. By Tuesday, her tone shifted from outrage to disbelief. I didn't think you were serious, she wrote in an email my attorney shared. This isn't like you. The irony wasn't lost on me. After months of treating me as inconsequential, she was suddenly an expert on my character and intentions. Wednesday delivered the first bills. Automatically generated notices for the mortgage, utilities, and credit card payments that would now fall entirely to her. The careful financial architecture I had maintained for years, largely invisible to her, despite her claims of handling the important stuff, was now exposed in its absence. A week into my departure, her mother called. I answered out of respect for the woman who had always been kind to me. She's a mess, her mother said without preamble. She didn't see this coming. That's the problem, I replied quietly. She stopped seeing me at all. The conversation was brief but illuminating. According to her mother, she had portrayed our marriage as perfect to her family, never mentioning her growing disdain for me or our partnership. The public persona of strong, independent woman apparently hadn't extended to familial honesty. 10 days after my departure, the first past due notice arrived at our former home. She forwarded it to my attorney with a single question: is he going to let everything we built fall apart? My attorney's response was professionally crafted but essentially communicated. You built this reality where you didn't need him. Now inhabit it fully. 2 weeks in, I received an unexpected package at my office. Apparently, she had tracked down my workplace. Inside was my wedding band with a note, "You forgot this." I placed the ring in my desk drawer, struck by her complete misunderstanding of my actions. The ring hadn't been forgotten. It had been deliberately left behind. The third week brought financial escalation. She had discovered that maintaining our lifestyle single-handedly was challenging. Her salary alone, despite her promotion, couldn't carry the mortgage that had seemed reasonable when divided between two incomes. The car payment she had insisted we could afford for her new luxury vehicle was suddenly burdensome. A mutual friend reached out, concerned. "She's telling everyone you abandoned her without warning," he said cautiously, "that you left her drowning in debt." I thanked him for the information but offered no counter-narrative. The truth would emerge organically through actions rather than words. 1 month after my departure, her lawyer contacted mine. The tone had shifted dramatically. The independent woman who needed nothing from me was now requesting temporary support while she adjusted to the new circumstances. My attorney advised we could offer a one-time settlement rather than ongoing payments. I agreed, specifying an amount that was fair but not excessive. 6 weeks in, I encountered her unexpectedly at our old coffee shop. She looked different, the carefully maintained appearance showing subtle signs of strain. Our eyes met briefly before she hurriedly gathered her things and left without ordering. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for several minutes, head bowed over the steering wheel. That evening, a more subdued email arrived via my attorney. "I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't see how I was treating you." For the first time since my departure, I felt a twinge of something beyond detachment. Observation, not regret for leaving, but sadness for what had been lost, a connection that had once been meaningful to both of us. The practical aftermath continued unfolding. She listed our house for sale, unable to maintain it alone. Her social media posts about embracing change and new beginnings contrasted sharply with the increasingly desperate financial inquiries coming through our attorneys. The independent life she had so confidently proclaimed turned out to require more resources than anticipated. 2 months after walking away, I received the final confirmation of what I had suspected all along. The bills had arrived, and the strong independent woman had discovered the true cost of standing entirely alone. 6 months passed like a slow exhale. The divorce was finalized with surprising efficiency. She had ultimately opted for the path of least resistance, accepting the equitable division I had proposed from the beginning. Our house sold, though for less than we had hoped. According to my attorney, she had moved to a small apartment across town and taken a different position at her company. Our lives, once intimately intertwined, now existed on separate planes. I settled into my new reality with unexpected ease. The apartment gradually transformed from a temporary shelter to an actual home. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during the difficult final months of my marriage. My work, no longer overshadowed by domestic tension, flourished. The heavy weight I had carried for so long, the constant effort to maintain a relationship with someone who no longer valued it, had lifted, allowing me to rediscover parts of myself that had been suppressed. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. "It's me. Can we meet just to talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, conflicting emotions surfacing, curiosity, weariness, a faint echo of the connection we had once shared. After careful consideration, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. She arrived precisely on time, a trait I had always appreciated. The confident swagger that had characterized her final months in our marriage was gone, replaced by a more subdued demeanor. She looked well but different. Her expensive designer clothes exchanged for simpler attire. Her elaborate hairstyle now a more practical cut. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat across from each other, steam rising from our cups. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either," I admitted. An awkward silence stretched between us before she spoke again. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. And therapy," she added with a self-conscious laugh. "Turns out there's a difference between actual independence and just pushing people away to prove something." I nodded but offered no easy absolution. The pain she had caused had been too substantial, too deliberate to dismiss with a simple acknowledgement. "My therapist asked me when things changed," she continued, rotating her cup slowly. "When I started treating you that way. I couldn't pinpoint it at first, but eventually I realized it started after my promotion. I was the only woman in senior leadership. They kept making comments about how I needed to be tougher, more assertive. Somehow that translated into believing I needed to reject anything that looked like interdependence, including our marriage." "Yes," I said quietly. Her eyes met mine directly. "I confused being strong with being harsh. Independence with isolation." She paused. "I'm not asking for reconciliation. That ship has sailed, and I understand why. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, what I did, who I became. And I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air between us, sincere but unable to rewrite history. We talked for another hour. Not about reconciliation, but about closure. She shared that her independent woman identity had collapsed within weeks of my departure, forcing a painful reckoning with her interdependence on others. not just financially but emotionally and practically. The colleagues who had applauded her dismissive comments about marriage had vanished when she needed actual support. As our conversation drew to a close, she hesitated before asking, "Are you seeing anyone?" "Yes," I replied. "Someone who values partnership rather than seeing it as weakness." I didn't elaborate further. My new relationship was still developing, characterized by mutual respect and appreciation, qualities I now recognized as non-negotiable. She nodded, a flash of regret crossing her features before she composed herself. "You deserve that. You always did." We parted without dramatic declarations or promises to stay in touch. Some chapters are meant to close completely. 3 weeks later, I received a small package, a book I had mentioned wanting to read during our coffee meeting, with a simple note. "Thank you for the lesson in true independence. It's not about needing no one. It's about being whole enough to choose interdependence wisely." The irony wasn't lost on me. Her journey toward genuine strength had begun only after she lost the partnership she had devalued. My own independence had been reclaimed not through grand declarations, but through the quiet dignity of walking away from someone who couldn't see my worth. As I placed the book on my shelf, I reflected on the strange symmetry of our story. She had proclaimed independence while desperately requiring support. I had sought partnership while ultimately finding freedom in solitude. We had both found what we needed, just not in the ways we had expected. The final piece of mail forwarded from our old address arrived the following week. A credit card statement addressed to her, marked past due in bold red letters. I returned it to the sender without opening it. Her bills, like her journey, were no longer my responsibility. The strong, independent woman she had claimed to be was perhaps finally emerging, not through declarations or dismissals, but through the hard-earned wisdom that comes from facing the consequences of one's choices. As for me, I had discovered that true strength sometimes looks like walking away, and real independence includes the freedom to choose who deserves a place in your life.